So at the Bridge Church this past Sunday, we were back in the book of Mark, and we're going to be there for the next few months, and we looked at this passage from Mark chapter 8 where Jesus says some really pretty radical things about kingship and about discipleship, about how Jesus becomes the king and how we become his citizens. And I told the people who were there a little bit about this book, The Heavenly Man, written by a guy named Brother Yun, and he was a house church leader in China. And he tells these stories where he was imprisoned and tortured and threatened because of his faith in Jesus. And oftentimes the prison guards or the authorities or whatever would say to him, Yun, if you confess your crimes, if you admit that this whole thing about Jesus is a farce, then we'll let you go back to your family. And over again he said, I'm not going to be a Judas, I'm not going to betray Jesus. And he would be tortured and imprisoned even more. This guy's story convicts me. It convicts me and makes me ask, would I be willing to give up everything for Jesus, even my life? Because that's what Jesus asks of us. We looked at the beginning of Mark 8, verses 31 to 33, how Jesus says that he is the king, he's the Messiah, because he suffers, because he goes to his death at the cross, that it is through his suffering that Jesus is then resurrected and enthroned as king. And that if we are to receive him as king, that means we're going to follow him. I mean, you just imagine, we got a path here that kind of goes through the woods, and you can imagine, if you will, that this path was crowded over with thorns, with thistles, with all kinds of things that would scratch us and hurt us. And yet at the end of that path there was, the most beautiful sight that your eyes had ever seen. There was food, there was water, there were friends, and imagine that going ahead of you on this path was someone unlike anyone you had ever met, someone who was greater, who was kinder, who was just had this stature that you had never seen before, and he was going before you. You'd get scratched up, you'd get hurt. I don't know, who knows what kinds of bad things could happen to you, but if you got to follow this guy and if you trusted where he was going, then wouldn't you go with him anyway? I mean, that's kind of what Jesus says in Mark 8. Look, I'm going to die for you. I'm this good, I'm this great, but if you're going to follow me, it means you're going to take the same path. You're going to get hurt, you're going to get scratched up as well. And Jesus doesn't pull any punches. He doesn't, try to make us feel comfortable about this thing. So my one big question for you this week as you talk about this text and these stories and this challenge is, what is keeping you from giving your whole life to Jesus?